And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to Preneurcast.
Yeah, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Tom Kosher.
how well did that go down?
Talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at preneurmarketing.com.
Hey everyone, Pete Williams here for another episode of Preneurcast. And as always, I have my trusty right-hand man, Dom Goucher, with us. How are you, mate?
Very well, Pete, very well. Great to be back together doing an episode.
Yeah, it's our first co-episode in quite some time, and particularly the first one for this new season of Preneurcast, which is awesome.
Yeah, let's admit it, you actually just want a rest, don't you?
Mate, there's been some awesome episodes so far this season. We've had some great conversations. With Daniel Coyle, the author of The Talent Code, also Joe Sugarman, the marketing pioneer, and we've still got some other ones up in our sleeve in the next couple of weeks with Robert Allen, not Mark Victor Hansen, sorry.
Might be.
Actually, we are talking to try and organise that one, so we'll see how we go. But it's not in the can yet.
So all kind of big names coming down the line, but this week it's just you and me with a little topic to discuss. This week's topic, I'll give you a little bit of teaser, folks. It is one of those big promises that you get that you hear about, which is how to get an extra month every year. Work that one out.
But first, we should obviously thank our resident sponsor here at Preneurcast, which is Audible, the fantastic company who has the largest range of audiobooks on the planet. And if you have been a previous listener to the show, you know that's how I consume pretty much all the books that I do. It's all in audio format, generally at 2-speed while I'm out running, riding, training, driving, whatever it might be, doing those two birds, one stone kind of scenario. And it's been a really cool book that I've been listening to recently. It's a little bit different. Well, it's not that different, I guess, but it's called The Man Who Sold America, The Amazing and True Story of Albert D. Lasker and the Creation of the Advertising Century. Now, it's a long book. It's about 16, 17 hours.
Crikey.
There's quite a bit of content. Yeah, it's pretty full on. But the really cool thing is Albert Lasker was probably like the original David Ogilvy. I think everyone knows him as being one of the, the pioneers of advertising and marketing and Madison Avenue. Well, Albert Lasker was that guy about 50 or 60 years earlier at the start and maybe you call the middle of the 20th century. He started or founded or grew is probably even the better term. One of the biggest advertising agencies there was based in Chicago and hired a little copywriter that we've mentioned quite a bit called Claude Hopkins. Now, obviously, advisory board members would know who Claude is very, very well because obviously, we gift all new advisory board members a copy of both of Claude's books, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising, and they are seriously my two favorite marketing books of all time. So when I kind of stumbled across this book, The Man Who Sold America, and realized that Lasker was the person who employed Hopkins, I'm like, okay, this has got to have some amazing stories in this to kind of put some context around the stuff that Claude talks about in his book. And it's really, really cool. There was a gentleman that Lasker hired before Hopkins as a copywriter who was the first person to term copywriting as salesmanship in print. So that's a term that I think most people know these days. It came back from a gentleman that worked for Lasker. And it's just amazing. I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through it right now. And, it's covered all the advertising side of stuff. And it's now going into how Lasker and his team started, helping politicians market themselves and position themselves. And it's really cool.
Awesome. And I love stuff like that, the story behind things, the history of stuff. But it's to me, as we say time and time again, some things just don't change. The basics of copywriting, the basics of advertising, messaging, and all that kind of stuff. You can go back 100 years and learn something. We talked about loads of different things. You've read quite a few historical books in the last year. There was the Houdini book. That was a fascinating story. And that wasn't really about marketing and salesmanship directly. It was just Houdini's story, but Houdini was a fabulous marketeer. There was loads of stuff to learn from that. So I am going to put that on my list, but at 16 hours, That's an awful lot of train rides for me to get through. That's up there with old Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, that is.
Well, it is. I do think, though, that with this book, now, as I said, I'm only 2/3 of the way through it, so I can't justify what's in the last part of the book. But it's really the first half is where they sort of talk about the growth of his advertising agency and how it grew and what they did and the marketing of Sunkist and Kleenex and puffed wheat and puffed rice and some of the sort of brands that people know of these days sort of all came through his agency in the early 20th century. So that's a really cool, exciting stuff. The stuff about sort of marketing American presidents hasn't been overly engaging for me because I'm not an American. I found it interesting, but it kind of goes off in different paths because obviously Lasker was more than just his advertising agency. So it's a full biography, but it's a really cool book. So if you are a lover of good marketing and the history of marketing and advertising, I highly recommend you go to audible.com, check it out, or ideally, audibletrial.com/Preneurcast. audibletrial.com/Preneurcast. You can sign up and get a free audiobook as a listener to the show. So I highly recommend, if you haven't joined Audible, go over there, check it out, and download a copy of The Man Who Sold America at no cost, thanks to Audible.
Awesome. And so into our main topic for this show, which is how to get an extra month back each year. Go on then,
Yes.
Pete.
It was I'm going to use the overused J. Abraham term profound. It was a profound revelation that it came to me recently. I actually went to a Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within, which is his 4-day workshop where you walk on fire and all that sort of stuff. I've done it a couple of times before, but it was probably 12 years ago and then 10 years ago. So I had the opportunity to go again this year. So I thought, why not? And I also had an extra ticket. So I thought I'll take Fleur, which was an interesting experience, taking her along to one of these events. Obviously, she knows exactly the world I live in, so to speak, but hasn't actually experienced it firsthand. So she kind of got a bit of a shock with all the hugging and the cheering and the chanting. But nonetheless, she played full out, and I'm very proud of her for that. But one of the things they said that I don't recall hearing before was this way to add an extra month to your year. And, that's always interesting for someone who's so busy, and obviously all our listeners who are so flat out as well, to get an extra month in your year. Imagine what that would do to your business. To be able to have an extra month, to be able to write more copy, to do more split tests, to achieve more of your goals, just to do more training, whatever it might be. Like, imagine that everyone has 12 months. Everyone says no one can get more time. But if I showed you how to get an extra month, how much more could you achieve? How much quicker could you grow than your competition? How much more output could you do than everybody else? It's a pretty, as I said, profound thought, isn't it?
It is, and it is one of the most common things that we hear from people, especially people who are maybe already have a day job and are trying to build a business on their own, or are trying to go from a business where it is right now, the kind of status quo, to grow that business in a big way. And they say to us, well, where am I going to find the time? I work all day. I'm already doing everything that I'm doing. I'm just about managing to do that. How do I find the time and still, have a life outside of work and all that stuff? It's one of the most common things that we hear whenever, and it's what people say whenever you come across any kind of new training. Well, even in the case of just wanting to do some training, just wanting to learn something, do something new. All these things, you need to allocate the time to it. But where does that time come from? So certainly, if you had said to me, get an extra month back a year, I'd be front of the queue.
Well, again, it's very profound because if you think about it and do the math, it's very, very simple. If you just slept 1 hour less a day, so 1 hour less sleep per night, that gives you 365 additional hours in your year. Now, if you have a 12-hour day, as on average, that's a 12-hour work day to sort of do what you need to do, that is 30 additional 12-hour days you get by sleeping 1 hour less a night, which 30 days is essentially the same as an extra month. So 1 hour less sleep per night generates 365 additional hours in your working year, which is the equivalent of 30 full days. And that, to me, was really profound to think that, if I slept 1 hour less a night and actually use that hour in a productive way, this is the catch, it's got to be in a productive way, I'll actually have an extra month in my year, which is a huge advantage over all my competition. Now, for a lot of people, like, oh, I can't sleep an extra hour a day, whatever it might be. There's a lot of things you need to think about when it comes to sleeping an hour less a day. You need to make sure your energy is good and your diet's right and your physiology is right. And that's really, really important. And there's, plenty of ways to do that. And, if you're sleeping more than 6 hours a night, you are probably sleeping more than you need to. There's plenty of people out there who function extremely well on 5-6 hours sleep per night, even with high energy jobs and outputs. And I think it comes down to making sure your diet is an energizing diet and that you actually have energy and you change your physiology to get energy and you meditate and you do certain things to be able to sustain that. But if that can be a goal you have for the next month, is to get your body and your rhythms and your habits in a place that allow you to sleep 1 hour less a night than you're doing right now, and then you can sustain that over the next 12 months, you're going to have another entire month to do work in your business. If you get up that hour earlier and spend that hour working productively on your business, just think about what effect that's going to have. It's going to be a huge effect from where you are right now.
Absolutely. Now, I must say, in my official capacity as unofficial person that says things, that we are not doctors. And this should not be considered medical advice in any way. However, the idea of tomorrow morning setting your alarm an hour earlier, or tonight going to bed an hour earlier, or going to bed an hour later, depending on whether you're a morning person or a night person. Pete said there's a lot of things involved with this. You have to first of all, I would strongly recommend you work out what end of the day you work best at. And that's where you try.
You and I are very different, I think.
Oh, incredibly different.
I'm a morning person.
Oh, actually, do you know what? We're the same, but unfortunately, because of the side of the earth we're on, it works out that we're different. Because it's the middle of the night for me, and it's early in the morning for you. So you're entering high energy, and I'm entering my low energy phase. So sometimes why we mix up the recording of the podcast, by the way, folks.
True.
Just to mix that up and give everybody a break. But you need to work out. So for in all seriousness, this should not be taken as medical advice, but you need to work it out. But one of the best tips I came across for this is, okay, you don't think you can do an hour. You don't think you can wake up an hour earlier or have 1 hour less sleep straight away. And that's your full month that you would get back if you do the maths that Pete says, which is just maths, no jiggery pokery. Well, what about 15 minutes? An extra 15 focus minutes, they rack up. That's still a week extra time in a year.
Yep.
Yeah. And trust me, I've done this. I've literally been through this myself. Because I heard a similar way. I didn't hear it in anywhere near such a profound way. But I heard this concept a while ago. And I like a lot of people listening said, whoa, no way, not going to set my alarm clock an hour earlier. But I set it 15 minutes earlier, and it is amazing. If you're focused, if you have a plan, if you know what you're going to do with those 15 minutes, it made a massive difference to my day, literally the next day. The next day, waking up 15 minutes earlier and having a plan of what I was going to do, which I think is a really important part of this, made such a huge difference. I started the day with such a strong intention, and it carried on through the day. I felt like I'd got an immediate win just because when my alarm clock went off 15 minutes earlier, I got straight out of bed and got on with something. The whole day went better. And I've managed to get it forward now. I have managed to get back an hour. I now do wake up a whole hour earlier.
And I think you said something that is really important there, and that is having that massive action plan. And having that really clear goal of what you're going to do the next day. And, I think a lot of people can listen to this and go, oh, yeah, sleep an hour less. I've heard that before, or whatever. But I think you really got to be clear about that, what that equates to, and really get a clear benefit and a clear understanding of, almost the outcome that you'll achieve by having an additional month. It's not about the extra hour. If you keep focusing on an extra hour a day, you go, an hour. An hour is not much. But you've got to look at what the compound effect is at the end of a year. It's an entire month that you have your competition are not going to have. That's huge. And it's absolutely huge. So you got to focus on that. You got to focus on the outcome of this, the compounded outcome.
But you will only get that compounded outcome with a plan.
Correct. I was going to say really quickly that in the same way that we talk about the 7 levers, it's all about the compounded outcome. Everything in life is about the compounded outcome. You need to look at that. That should be your motivation. That should be your drive. That should be what actually gives you the why of doing the little things like setting your alarm and getting up earlier. But it comes back to that massive action plan and getting very clear on, what are you going to do with that additional time? And also, to a certain extent, what's your massive action plan to be able to get that extra hour in your day? But we won't spend time on that. I don't want to sit here and talk about, diet and meditation and energy and physiology. Like, that's not my wheelhouse. But there's plenty of stuff you can read online about how to sort of, make the use of your day to give you a result of that extra hour or an hour less sleep, depending on how you look at it. But the key I want to talk about now, as you were saying, Dom, is having that massive action plan of what you're going to do once you get that extra hour a day, that extra month a year. How are you going to utilize that time effectively?
Cool. Do you have a suggested massive action plan? He says promptingly.
Well, there's probably 2 things, I think. And one of the things is what you spoke about before, is having that plan the night before of what am I going to do the next day? Because I think that is a real key to giving you that motivation to get your ass out of the covers earlier, if that's the way you're going to play this game. If you're going to play the game by getting up earlier, you have to have a clear set of tasks, the massive action you're going to take that next morning. Because otherwise you're going to lie in bed and go, I don't know what to do. Which one should I do here? It's not really going to make any difference today. Don't worry about it. And all this negative self-talk is going to come into your mind. So what you need to do, and again, it's something you've probably heard before, but the reason you heard it before is because it works, is the night before, when your motivation is high, put that positive constraint in place and list out the massive action you're going to take the next day. What is it I'm going to do the next morning? I am going to go and, review my analytics stats. I am going to go and write an email to my audience. I am going to go and do something that builds on one of the 7 levers for my business. And have that clear outcome of this is the action I'm going to take the next morning. Because when you wake up, when the alarm goes off, you'll be like, all right, I know exactly what I need to do right now. I'm going to get out and do that exact task, those exact steps that is part of this massive action plan.
Yeah, let's just look at those examples quickly. So you said I'm going to get up and I'm going to review my analytics, right? So reviewing your analytics sometimes can take time, but it's really, really valuable because we always talk about this. If you can't manage what you don't measure, and analytics of a website is a type of measurement. And when you look at those measurements, it shows you something, and that might inform what you do with the hours in the rest of the week. And at that point, just those 7 days, those 7 extra hours, or even just 5 hours, 7 extra hours of working on something with a goal and a direction will get you a massive, massive difference in whatever it is you're looking at. Similarly with email, if you think about creating a sequence of emails that you would be mailing out to your audience once a week, well, if you sat down in one go, if you said, I'm going to sit down for 7 hours in a row to write out 7 emails, well, that's a whole day to most people in a row. Very few people could actually stomach that and get on with it. But if you got up in the morning, 7 mornings in a row, and with an extra hour, you sat down and wrote an email, at the end of that week, you have nearly 2 months worth of content to send out in your autoresponder sequence to your audience. Well, that's just a fantastic thing to have achieved in just a week with just getting up an hour earlier. So the rest of the day can go any way you like it to. But, those 2 things there alone have achieved something. But the 7 levers, we talk about 7 levers, or we haven't for a while, but I think if you are flapping around for something tangible to do, then we're back to the idea of having a framework, having a plan, having something to follow, and the 7 levers is an awesome focus for you and that extra hour a day.
Now, if you haven't, if you're a new listener to the show, welcome. If you haven't visited 7leversreport.com and downloaded the report on this framework, shame on you. Or if you're new, make sure you go and do it. Otherwise, shame on you tomorrow for not having done it.
There's your first hour.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's the 7 levers. Let's give a quick overview of this, because to me, this is the framework that your massive action plan should be built on. If you can do another round of the 7 levers, the whole idea of the 7 levers is to double the profit of your business with 7 small tweaks, and 7 small tweaks in these key areas, which we'll cover in a moment. But if you can fit another round of 7 levers in your business in a year, that's an additional doubling of your business in that year. It's very, very powerful. And 30 hours, when you really break it down, 30 hours of focused time should be all you need to tweak those 7 things. It's very, very profound once you actually start working through the framework. Because the framework is this. There are 7 things, 7 areas that drive the profit in your business. And everything you do to work on your business, to grow the profit of your business, should absolutely fit into one of these 7 areas. And if you're about to do something and not very, very clear on which one of these 7 levers that action is going to relate to, stop and reassess what you're about to do. You've got to be very, very clear on this. The other side of things is make sure you're working across all 7 levers, not just one over and over again. Now let's explain these 7 levers, because this is how you spend this extra hour, how you invest this extra month in your life.
Just to clarify, when you said working across, what you mean is make sure that you touch each one and you don't miss any out, not that you work across all of them all at the same time.
No, very true. Exactly. Very, very good. Thank you, Dom. So the first thing is traffic. Obviously, traffic is, somewhat the lifeblood of every business. You need your traffic to come to your website. You need the foot traffic to come into your retail store, whatever it might be. Traffic is one of the major things. But this is the area that everyone seems to focus on almost solely. Everyone just worries about traffic. Everything else is, well, if I get more traffic, I'm fine. But if you do the math, it is only one of the 7 areas that can double the profit of your business. So you've got traffic. Then you've got opt-ins. These are the people who actually, come into your store and try on a pair of shoes. It's the people who give you their email address. It's people who phone up your business and ask for a quote. These are the people who put their hand up and say, look, I'm more than just someone who's a prospect. I'm actually someone who is seriously thinking about actually buying and transacting with you as a company. So that's the second lever. The third lever is conversions. These are the people who actually open up their wallet and say, here, have some money and exchange that for your product or service. So these are your customers. You've then got your average price per item. So what is the average item price you are selling? What is that price you're selling it for? And how can you increase that price? What about how many items per transaction? So someone comes and buys something from your store. How can you get them to buy 2 or 3 items? Someone gets a service from you. How do you get them to buy a couple extra things at the same time as doing that original transaction? You've then got transactions per period. So how many times do people come back and buy from you again and again and again over that year? And also you've got margins as well. So this is the overall gross margins of your products. So the thing is, if you increase each one of these 7 areas by just over 10%, you'll actually double the profit of your business. So in these hours of power, if you want to term it like that, in these hours of power you're going to now get that add up to a massive month of time. In that 1 hour, can you potentially, if you have a website and you're a web-based business, maybe go and tweak your opt-in pages on your website to actually try and increase the conversion rate of that opt-in page, the opt-in page rate, by 10%. So right now you might have an opt-in form that's generating, let's say, a 7% opt-in success rate, as an example. If you can go and tweak some of this stuff in that hour of power and just increase it from 7 to 7.7%, just that 10% increase, 7 to 7.7%, you've achieved your goal of a 10% win. Then you can move on. And the next day or the next week, depending on how you want to structure your time, you then work out a way to, well, how do I increase the transactions per period? How do I write an email that makes an offer to my past customers to come back and buy from me again? Right now, you might have 2 out of every 10 people come and purchase from you again. So 20% of your customers come back and buy from you again in that particular year. Well, what can you do to increase that to 22%? It's a 10% increase on the 20. Well, sending an email blast out to all your customers who haven't bought from you again this year. Very, very easy way to get that 10% win. And this is the key thing, is all these little actions that can produce big results in the bottom line of your business are very, very easy 10% wins that you can actually get in these hours of power that you've now got available to your business. This is the massive action plan you need to put in place. You need to say, okay, I am going to sleep 1 hour less a night, or do 1 hour less of something a day to produce and give and provide my business with an extra month of my time and attention. And then use that time and attention wisely with a massive action plan. And the best action plan we know is the 7 levers of business framework.
Now, so just a couple of things. If you are a new listener, again, welcome. Really, really, really seriously now, the first thing you should do with any time that you've got, you make some time, is to go to 7leversreport.com. There's a link in the show notes. Go to 7leversreport.com, download it, read it through. It will explain and demonstrate the math. There's no voodoo here. It's not some secret, dodgy scam type thing. It's basic math. The way it works is that each incremental 10% feeds down that chain into the next thing. So you're not just getting 10%. So most people, if you ask them what's the overall increase, they'd say 70% because it's 7 tens. But it's not 7 tens. It's 10% feeding into the next 10%, feeding into the next one. That's why it is so powerful. And being able to add these extra hours with that focus, you know what you're doing because it's something in one of those 7 levers is really, really important. But I think there's also a secondary benefit here, Pete. It's really, really important to have that framework and that focus. And that's why we talk about the 7 levers, because it gets results for people. So many people that we've talked to just think it's a great framework. But the secondary benefit of this is that if you're that focused in that area, you'll probably find that you'll get far more than just those extra hours a day at the beginning back. The rest of your day will probably go more effectively as well.
Absolutely. If you time it right and you have that first hour of real focus and direction, it sets the standard for the rest of the day. I know, I think it was Bill Phillips, the author of the Body for Life series, a New York Times bestseller, as I lose my voice this morning, was asked a question once, if you were trying to get someone to lose weight, what is the biggest suggestion and tip you can give that person to help them succeed out of anything else? What's the one thing you would suggest they do? And his answer was, have the perfect breakfast. Not about training, not about doing a certain exercise, not about lifting weights or doing anything particular. His advice was, have the perfect breakfast. And the reason that is that he said from his experience, he's saying if you give the person the perfect breakfast and they eat that perfect breakfast, they're going to feel proud of themselves and want to continue that trend for the rest of the day. So they're going to be a bit smarter by the choices they make for the rest of the day. They're going to choose to walk the stairs rather than take the escalators because they want to be consistent with that breakfast, the way they started their day. So this sort of, hour of power focus in your business, this extra month you're going to have should be structured the same way. You try and spend your first hour of your day working on your business through this massive action plan, through this 7 levers framework, because as you just said, Dom, you're absolutely right. What will happen is the rest of your day will be consistent with that sort of mindset and that sort of success, and it changes everything.
How about this? Our normal show length is around the 45-minute mark. We're about to hit half an hour. How about we give everybody their first 15 minutes back?
I think you are absolutely on point here, mate. So please, if you haven't yet, go and check out 7leversreport.com and read that report. It is the framework that should drive your massive action plan. And then for the next 30 days, try getting up an hour earlier or going to sleep an hour later and investing that extra hour in your business. Because at the end of the year, if you keep this habit up, you will have something none of your competitors have. And that is an extra month of success, an extra month in your year. It's very profound, but very, very powerful.
Do let us know how you get on with this. Do feedback in the comments on iTunes, come to preneurmarketing.com and comment on the blog post that goes along with this. And obviously, anybody who's in the Platinum advisory board. We'll be talking to you about this as well, and we'll be watching your feedback very, very closely. We look forward to hearing you folks and how you get on with this idea, but it is, as Pete says, profound.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of Preneurcast with Pete Williams and Dom Gosher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.preneurmarketing.com or drop them a line via Preneurcast@preneurgroup.com.